Do me one small favour before we properly begin. Look at the space right in front of your face. The plain, ordinary gap between you and the far wall. There's nothing in it. Air, maybe a fleck of dust turning over in a sunbeam, and otherwise nothing at all. That's what your eyes swear to, and they swear to it with total confidence. Now here's the thing you told me off mic, the thing I've been chewing on all week and haven't been able to put down, and I want it on the record so I can hold you to it. You said that gap is not empty. You said that running through every single point of it, right now, this second, are invisible things. Things with a strength and a direction. And then you said the part that actually kept me awake, that those invisible things are more real and more fundamental than the little particles I've spent 4 whole episodes believing were the main event of the universe. So, say it again, with the microphone on this time.
I did say that, and I'll say it once more, but I want you to feel how strange it is before I make it sound reasonable, because making it sound reasonable is exactly how people quietly stop noticing how strange it is. The room you're sitting in is full, not of air. Forget the air's beside the point entirely. It is full of something you have never once seen and never will with any eye you'll ever own. And by the end of tonight, you're going to start suspecting it was the real furniture of the world all along, and that you and I and this table and everything else that feels reassuringly solid, that we're only the guests.
See, that is precisely the kind of sentence I cannot let you just stroll past. The room is full. I have been sitting in this room for the better part of an hour. I have waved my hand around in that gap. I'm doing it right now, and you can't hear a thing because there is nothing there to make a sound. It's empty, I checked, personally, repeatedly, with the hand.
You waved your hand through it, felt nothing, and filed the whole thing under nothing. That's fair. That is the completely honest report of your senses. The only trouble is that your senses are about to be outvoted badly, by a mountain of evidence they were never built to notice in the first place.
Outvoted. So, what you're telling me, in a roundabout and slightly ominous way, is that I have been swimming in some kind of invisible stuff since the day I was born, and not one single person thought to mention it to me.
Since before you could walk. Immersed in it, from your very first breath, surrounded, soaked in it, at every waking moment. And it never once so much as brushed against a single one of your 5 senses. That's not a small omission. That's the largest thing in the room, going completely unremarked for the whole of your life.
All right, then give me its name, this invisible stuff. What exactly is the thing that's supposedly filling my perfectly ordinary, perfectly empty room?
It's called a field, and that word is the entire business of tonight. 3 questions hang off it, really. What a field actually is, in plain terms, you can hold in your hand. Why the world was dragged into inventing it, kicking and screaming the whole way. And why it turns out to be a real, physical, honest thing, and not merely a clever way of talking about something else.
Fine, I'll come along for all 3, but I'll tell you now, that last claim, the one about the field being somehow more real than the actual particles, that's the one I flatly do not buy, and I want it noted that I am not going to be quietly talked round to it while I'm not looking.
I'd think less of you if you were. Hold your ground on that one, hard. I'm not going to ask you to simply take it. I'm going to try to earn it, 1 brick at a time, and if I don't manage it, you are entirely free to throw the whole thing back at me. But we can't begin there. To see why the particle isn't enough, we first have to go back and stand for a moment in the world we're about to leave behind. The tidy one.
The tidy one? All right, remind me then, where have we actually been these last few weeks?
4 episodes, and every last one of them was about the same kind of thing. Particles. Little objects sitting at points. Each one carrying 2 pieces of information and no more. A position, where it is, and a momentum, how it's moving and how much. That's the entire cast of characters. We learn that they take the path of least action, that of all the routes on offer, nature spends the least. We learn that behind every symmetry there sits a conserved treasure that never changes. A clean, countable little world of dots, each with a where and a how fast.
And I'll be honest with you, I liked that world. It was tidy. I could actually picture it. Everything in it was a thing, and the thing was somewhere in particular, and it was doing something in particular. No riddles, a place for everything.
It's a lovely world, genuinely lovely. You can hold the whole of it in your head at once. Every object a little dot with an address and a speed, all of them obeying a handful of beautiful rules. It's more or less the world Newton handed down to us, dressed up over the years in sharper and sharper mathematics. And I want to be clear, I am not here to tell you it's wrong.
But you've got that pause hiding in your voice, the one you get right before the floor moves. You're about to tell me it's not the end of the story.
It's not the bottom. That's the honest way to put it. Not wrong, just not the bottom. The particle is a real idea, a good one we'll keep using for the rest of our lives. It simply isn't the deepest idea. Tonight we meet a completely different kind of object. Nothing like a dot, and by the time we're finished, the particle is going to look like the smaller of the two ideas. The junior partner.
The smaller idea, the particle, the thing that, as far as I've ever been told, everything else is made out of.
The thing you currently believe everything is made out of. Hold that belief, but hold it loosely, in an open hand. Set it down on the table right there, where we can both keep half an eye on it. We may have to move it later.
I'll hold it at arm's length, how's that? Now, go on, why isn't it enough? What is it that the tidy little dot simply cannot do?
There's one thing they were never able to explain. Not once, not really. A problem so old and so quietly awkward that in the end everyone just learned to live beside it. The way you learn to live beside a stain on the ceiling you've stopped seeing. And the strangest part is where it's hiding. It's tucked inside the single most familiar fact you own.
All right, I'm intrigued despite myself. What's the familiar fact with a problem buried in the middle of it?
That things pull on each other across empty space.
That's the problem, things pulling. The sun holds the earth, a magnet grabs a nail off the table, I let go of my keys and down they go. That's just how the world is. That's not a problem, that's a Tuesday afternoon.
That's just how it is. That shrug you just did. That shrug is the ghost. That's it. Let me unshrug it for you, nice and slow. The sun holds the earth. Good, we agree it does. It's been doing it a long time. Now, how?
Gravity.
That's a name you've stuck on the outside of it, not a how. Look at the actual situation for a second. Really look at it. The sun is over there, across a gulf of empty space so wide that light itself, the fastest thing in all of creation, takes minutes to cross it. Minutes. The earth is over here, and between the two of them there is nothing. No rope, no rod, no hand, no thread, no wire, not a breath of anything at all. And yet somehow the sun reaches out across the whole of that emptiness and holds the earth on a leash, year after year after year. With what? Reaching across nothing, gripping with nothing, and never, not for one instant, letting go.
When you lay it out like that and make me actually stand in the gap and look both ways, with nothing, it reaches across nothing, using nothing, and it works.
It works perfectly, to the last decimal anyone can measure, without a single stumble or failure for as long as there has been an earth out there to be held. It is the most reliable grip in the universe, and there is visibly, provably, nothing doing the gripping. And it isn't only the Earth on that leash, it's every planet, every wandering comet, the tides that lift the whole sea twice a day, the moon that never falls in, and never flies off. One grip, reaching out through the dark, holding all of it at once. And if you go hunting for the rope, you come back every single time with empty hands.
Okay, but that's a magic trick. That's a magician on a stage, holding his two hands a foot apart, and the lady floating in the gap between them, and every single person in the theatre knowing full well there's a wire somewhere. Except in this particular show, there is genuinely no wire, and the lady genuinely is floating, and the trick genuinely never, ever fails. And what? Everyone just bought a ticket, watched the impossible thing, and clapped?
That's it, exactly. And here's the part that ought to comfort you a little. It bothered the man who discovered it every bit as much as it's bothering you right now. The one who first wrote down the law of gravity, Newton, the very man who handed us the formula that runs the heavens.
Hang on. Newton didn't believe his own law of gravity.
He believed the law completely. He'd checked it against the sky. It never missed. What he could not stomach was the picture that seemed to come bundled with it. The idea that one lump of matter could reach out across genuinely empty space and tug on a second lump with absolutely nothing in between the two of them to carry the tug. He called that notion, in almost these words, an absurdity. Said that no man with a proper head for thinking could ever really bring himself to swallow it. He handed us a law that predicted the motion of the planets flawlessly, and, in nearly the same breath, refused point-blank to believe the story it appeared to be telling about how.
So the founder himself left a little note scribbled in the margin. Wonderful formula, works a treat, but please, I beg you, don't ask me how it actually works, because whatever this is, this cannot be it.
More or less word for word. A law that could forecast the heavens for centuries, sitting right next to a mechanism its own author found frankly unbelievable. And here's the thing that makes it worse, not better. It isn't only gravity that pulls this particular trick.
The charges. You're winding up to tell me the electric charges do the exact same disappearing wire routine.
Rub a balloon on your sleeve a few times, hold it up near your hair, and the hair stands up and leans toward it, before anything has touched anything. One charge, tugging on another, straight across the open gap. And jiggle the near one up and down, and the far one jiggles in answer, across nothing at all. Same trick, entirely, just a bigger family playing it. Sparks, magnets, the sun, the tides, the keys hitting the floor. All of them reaching through nothing to lay hands on something.
And instantly? That's the bit I want to nail down. If I jiggle the near charge, does the far one feel it in the very same instant? No delay, no lag, no waiting for the news to arrive.
Hold that question. Hold it very, very carefully. Set it down right next to the one about my hand and the table. Because that one little word, instantly, is the exact crack that the whole thing eventually breaks along further down the road. But not tonight. Tonight I only want you to feel the discomfort of it sitting in your chest. The founders felt it. Newton felt it, keenly. Every single person who ever sat down and thought hard about reaching across nothing came away feeling just a touch seasick.
So the flag we're planting, the thing you're deliberately setting up so you can knock it flat later, is the sun reaches out and grabs.
That's the flag. A source reaches across the empty gap and seizes the distant thing. Write it up on the board in big, confident letters. Because in a few minutes' time, we are going to walk over there together and take it down. And I want you watching closely when it falls, so you can't accuse me of doing it while your back was turned.
And put what up in its place?
The idea that nothing crosses the gap at all. Ever. Not the smallest thing. But I can't just hand you that sentence now. It would land like a riddle and mean absolutely nothing to you. It only starts to work, to click into place, once you actually know what a field is. So let's go and build one. Gently. Starting, of all places, from something in your kitchen.
My kitchen. We have gone, in the space of about 5 minutes, from the sun holding the earth to the state of my kitchen.
Your kitchen. Bear with me, it's the fastest way in. It's warm over by the oven and cold over by the window, true?
Obviously true, that's just where the oven is and where the draft comes in. That's not physics, that's my heating bill.
So at every point in that kitchen, there is a temperature, a number. Right by the oven, a big number. Over by the window, a small one. Halfway between the two, something in the middle. Pick any point at all in that room, any point you like, however small, and there is a temperature sitting on it. Right now. Whether or not you happen to be standing there holding a thermometer up to check.
Sure, the room has a temperature everywhere in it. I don't need to personally go and stand by the window for the window to be cold. It just is cold, whether I visit it or not.
Then you already understand a field. That's it. That is the entire idea, start to finish, and you've quietly had it since you were a child. A field is a quantity that has a value at every point of space. The temperature in your kitchen is a field, a number parked at every single point, a smooth, invisible landscape of warm and cool, filling the whole room, wall to wall, floor to ceiling, with no gaps.
That's a field. That's just the temperature. I've known there's a temperature everywhere in a room since I was about 6 years old. You've taken the thermostat and given it a grand and mysterious name.
You've understood a field since you were 6. You simply never once called it that. And notice the one small thing that makes it a genuine field and not merely a fact about your thermometer. The temperature over there by the window is there whether or not anyone is measuring it. The number sits on the point itself. The point owns it. You are only ever visiting to read it off. The value doesn't wait for you, and it doesn't need you.
The value belongs to the point, not to me and my checking. All right, so a field is just a number, sitting at every point of space. I'll be honest, that feels almost too gentle to be the big, frightening idea you opened the show promising me.
It is exactly that gentle. And now we make it richer with one single move. Temperature is only a number. It doesn't point anywhere. Warm doesn't lean in a direction. But now think, instead, about the wind.
The wind. From the temperature to the wind. All right?
At every point out there in the open air, the wind has a strength and a direction. Not just how hard is it blowing, but which way is it going? So picture this. At every point in the air, hang a tiny arrow. Long where the wind is fierce, short where it's just a gentle breath, and each one pointing whichever way the air is actually moving at that spot. An arrow sitting at every single point of space, the whole sky bristling with them.
So a whole sky, quietly full of little arrows. One at every point, all of them leaning together the way the wind happens to blow. That's actually a rather beautiful thing to picture.
That's a field of arrows. Temperature was a field of numbers. The wind is a field of arrows, a strength and a direction at every point, both at once. And now that you've built the idea for yourself out of the weather, I can tell you what the electric field is, and it will cost you nothing new whatsoever. You've already done the hard part.
Go on then, cash it in. What's the electric field?
Take a charge, the balloon, let's say. It fills the space all around itself with a field of arrows. At every point near it there's an arrow, and each arrow says one thing. A charge placed right here would be shoved this hard, in this direction. Not how warm is it here, but how hard would you be pushed here, and which way would you go flying? An arrow of pure push, sitting at every point of space around the balloon. That is the electric field. And the magnetic field is simply another one just like it, another arrow of a slightly different flavor of push, sitting at every point.
So the space all around the balloon is packed with these push arrows, everywhere around it, all of them there at the same time, filling it up.
Everywhere around it, all at once. And here comes the part people trip over and fall flat, so plant both feet firmly before you take a step onto it. Those arrows are there whether or not anything is sitting at those points to actually be pushed. The arrow off by the window in the balloon's field is there, sitting at that point, ready, cocked and loaded, even with absolutely nothing at that point to feel the shove.
Even with nothing there to push. So the push that would happen is just hanging there on its own in the empty space, on standby, waiting around for a customer to walk in.
On standby. That's rather lovely. Keep that. Yes. The field is the readiness itself, painted onto every point of space, patiently waiting. Nothing has to be there for it to exist. The readiness is there regardless, whether anyone ever comes to collect on it or not.
Here's what I keep snagging on, though. A particle, that's a thing at one single spot, isn't it? One dot, one address, and if you want to know where it is, there's an answer waiting for you. But you're telling me the field is at every spot at once. That isn't one thing sitting somewhere. That's everywhere, all at the same time. Those are two completely different sorts of object.
And that may be the deepest thing you've said all night. So hold on to it, hard. A particle lives at a single point. Ask it where it is, and there's one honest answer, one address on the map. A field lives at every point. Ask it where it is, and the only honest answer is yes. It isn't somewhere. It's everywhere at once, just quietly carrying a different value from place to place. That's exactly why it was such a wrench to bring into physics in the first place. It's a genuinely new kind of thing, and that old, comfortable question, but where is it really, simply stops fitting it. You have to put the question down.
And did somebody honestly think of it this way, first time round? Or is this a tidy little picture you're painting for me now, after the fact, comfortable in the knowledge of how it all turned out?
Somebody thought of it this way, and thought it hard, against a great deal of fashion, back when the whole clever crowd was busy doing something else entirely. A man called Faraday. He had almost none of the grand mathematics the others leaned on, never had the schooling for it, so instead he thought in pictures, in his own head, in the plainest possible terms. And he pictured the space around a magnet, around a charge, as genuinely full, threaded all through with lines. Lines of force, he called them. Real things, reaching out and filling the room.
Lines of force. So he saw the arrows before anybody had a way to draw them properly.
He saw the arrows before anyone alive could write them down in numbers. And here's the part that got him quietly laughed at, in his day. He did not think those lines were a handy little doodle for keeping track of the force. He thought they were real. Actually out there, in the space, holding energy, doing the real work of the pushing and the pulling. The fashionable opinion was that he was being a bit naive. The untrained fellow who couldn't manage the sums, so he drew pictures instead, bless him. He wasn't being naive, he was being early.
Early. Oh, I like that a great deal. The man wasn't wrong at all. He was just standing on a spot the rest of the crowd hadn't walked over to yet.
Exactly the spot they hadn't reached yet. They caught up with him eventually. Now, I want you to hold Faraday's picture in one hand and hold our seasick little problem in the other, because the instant you press the two of them together, the ghost dies. On the spot. This is the turn of the whole night.
The turn. All right, I'm braced. I've got the sun in one hand and the earth in the other. No rope, no hand, 100 million miles of nothing in between them. Fix it. Right now, go.
Here it is. There is no reaching across. None. The sun does not reach out and grab the earth. It never touches the earth. It never sends a single thing across the gap to it. It doesn't even, in any meaningful sense, know that the earth is out there at all.
Then what in the world is holding the earth? Because something is very plainly holding the earth. I've watched it go round, it doesn't wander off.
The sun does one thing, and one thing only. It fills the space around itself with a field. It changes the very character of the space in its own neighborhood, and that change spreads outward, from point to neighboring point to the next neighboring point, filling the whole surrounding gulf with field everywhere around it. And that is all the sun does, full stop. It does not act on anything far away. It never lays a finger on anything distant. It simply conditions the space right around itself and lets that condition spread.
All right, so the sun sets up a field, and the field is everywhere. Fine. And the Earth? What does the Earth actually feel out there?
The Earth feels one thing, and one thing only. The field right where the Earth is sitting. Right here, at its own address. The Earth never feels the sun. It can't. The sun is a whole gulf away and completely out of reach. It feels the field that happens to be present at its own location, right under it, and it responds to that, and only that. Local, immediate, no gap to cross, because it isn't reaching out for anything across any gap. Everything it responds to is already right there, pressed up against it.
Wait, say that again, slower, because I think something just shifted under me and I want to feel it move properly this time.
Slower then. Here it is, laid out flat. The sun fills the space around it with a field. The field is present everywhere in that space, including at exactly the point where the Earth happens to be. And the Earth responds only to the field it is actually sitting in, the field right there, touching it at the Earth, and never to the distant sun at all. Nothing crosses the gap between the two of them, because everything the Earth needs is already at the Earth. The go-between was standing right there in the gap the entire time, and we just couldn't see it.
So nothing travels across the gap. The gap was already full. The Earth isn't being grabbed from far away by some invisible hand. It's being nudged, gently and constantly, by what is already right there under its own feet.
That's the cure. The whole of it, in one breath. Say it once more. It's yours now. It's not mine anymore.
Nothing reaches across the nothing, because the nothing was never nothing in the first place. The field was already sitting there, at every single point, and each thing only ever feels the field right where it happens to be standing. Nobody reaches for anybody. Everybody just quietly responds to what's local, to what's touching them.
There is your flag. Watch it go over. The sun reaches out and grabs. Gone, toppled, done. There is no reaching. There is only a field, filling all of space, and objects feeling that field at their own location, wherever each of them happens to stand. The magic trick with no wires was never a trick at all. The wire was there the whole time. It just fills the whole of space at once, so you never once thought to notice it as a wire.
And my balloon and my hair, that's the exact same story now, isn't it? It has to be.
The very same story, top to bottom. The charge doesn't reach across to your hair. It fills the space around itself with an electric field, and your hair feels that field right there, at your hair. The near thing responds only to what is touching it. It's local. It was always local. We simply couldn't see the middleman standing in between the two of them, because the middleman is, and always will be, invisible.
The middleman being the field, sitting there in the gap, quietly doing all the actual work, while the two big obvious objects on either end took all the credit for it.
The field is the middleman. And that, right there, is the real reason it had to be brought into physics at all. Not as a decoration, not as a helpful little sketch to make the sums easier, but to kill the spooky, reaching across, stone dead. Once the field is sitting in the gap, every push and every pull in the whole of the world becomes a local story. A thing responds to the field right where it is, and the field carries the influence onward, from place to neighboring place to the next, never once skipping over the ground in between, never leaping.
So this whole time, The room, the gap, the empty air I've been so confidently waving my hand back and forth through. The empty part was the part doing all the work. And the solid things, the things I was so sure were the point, were just standing around reacting to it.
The empty part was the main character all along. And you, swimming in it since birth, exactly as you said a while ago, when you thought you were only making a joke.
I did say that, didn't I? I meant it as a joke. I would like it entered into the record that I meant it purely as a joke. And you've gone and made it true on me.
Most of the true things start their life as the joke. You have been immersed in fields for your entire life. The Earth's gravity holding you in your chair, the field of every charge in every object around you, all of them overlapping, layered on top of one another, filling every point of the room you're in right now. You only ever called it empty because your hand went straight through it without catching on a thing.
And the reason absolutely nobody ever told me is that you cannot see a field. Not ever. You can only ever see what it does to some poor bit of stuff that happens to be sitting in it.
You only ever see the stuff twitch. The arrow itself is invisible, always, forever. But here's where I have to gently stop you enjoying this quite so much, because there is a fair objection coming down the track, and I would much rather you were the one to raise it than me.
The objection being, hang on, let me actually find it myself before I say it out loud. Give me a second. All right, here it is, I've got it. Couldn't this whole beautiful thing just be bookkeeping? A prettier, more elaborate way of talking about the very same old force. I could say field, or I could just say the sun pulls the earth, and I'd get the identical answer at the end either way. So maybe the field is only a picture, a story we tell, and the real things are still just the two objects, tugging on each other the way they always were.
That is the objection, and it is a genuinely good one. And for a long stretch of history, properly clever people said exactly that the field is just a convenient way to keep the accounts straight, a fiction that happens to hand you all the right numbers. And if that were true, if that were really all it was, then the field wouldn't be a thing at all. It would be a story about things, a trick of accounting, a shadow the sums cast on the wall.
Right, so how do you know it's not just a story? How do you actually know, really know, that the field is there, physically, out in the space, and not just a tidy and convenient way of describing two objects having a tug of war?
Because a story doesn't carry energy. A story cannot be plucked and set ringing like a struck bell. And a story most certainly cannot outlive the thing that told it. The field does all three of those, every one of them. So let me show you each in turn, and then at the end, you can tell me to my face whether it's still just a story.
All three. All right, start with the energy then. What do you even mean the field carries energy?
I mean it in the plainest, most literal, least poetic way there is. The field carries energy. Real energy, the very same currency you boil a kettle with, the same stuff that turns a wheel or warms a room. And it's stored not inside any object at all, but in the space itself, in the field that fills it. Where the field is strong, there is more energy sitting right there, in that patch of so-called empty space. It is not a number in a ledger somewhere, it is out there, in the gap. And in principle, you could reach in and draw on it, spend it, put it to honest work.
Energy, real energy, sitting out there in empty space. In the exact part of the room I have spent my entire life confidently calling nothing.
In the exact part you've been calling nothing. The nothing has a fuel gauge, and I promise you it is not reading empty. There is a reservoir out there, sitting quietly in the gap, and your senses were simply never built to feel the weight of it. Think of the sky just before a lightning strike, the electric field between the cloud and the ground, wound up tighter and tighter, storing a colossal amount of energy in the plain, ordinary air of the gap. And when it finally lets go, that flash, that crack, that is the energy that was already sitting there, in the field, in the empty space, cashing itself in all at once. It was in the gap the whole time, long before anything ever jumped.
All right, I'll grant you. That is already a good deal more than a mere story would ever need to be carrying around. What's the second thing? Plucked and set ringing, you said.
Picture a pond. Dead still water, not a breath of wind. That's like a field, just sitting there, calm, quietly filling up its space, doing nothing in particular. Now drop a stone into it. You've disturbed it in one single spot, and the disturbance flatly refuses to stay put where you made it. It spreads, a ripple, travelling outward, running clear across the whole surface, carrying the news of the stone all the way to the far bank.
A ripple? And you're about to tell me the field itself can do that?
A field can do precisely that. Jiggle the source, give the charge a good hard shake, and you don't just shift the arrows sitting right next door. You send a ripple running outward through the field itself, a disturbance travelling from point to neighbouring point to the next, out across the whole of space. And a travelling ripple in a field has a name you already know, cold in your bones. From the pond, from a shaken rope, from sound moving through the air.
A wave.
A wave. A ripple in a field is a wave. And now I have to flag something for you, and then very deliberately walk away from it and leave it lying there, because it is genuinely not tonight's to prove. But I'd be cheating you, honestly cheating you, if I didn't at least say it out loud once.
Oh, you've got that voice on again, the one where you're about to hand me something enormous and then fold your arms and refuse to unwrap it. Go on, what is it you're flagging?
One particular kind of ripple, a ripple in the electric and magnetic field, travelling outward through space, is light itself. The actual light you are seeing this room by right now. Light is a wave in a field. I'm not going to prove that to you tonight. That is precisely the next conversation, and it is one of the most beautiful in all of physics. But hold it, gently, cupped in your hands, as a promise. The field can ripple, and one particular ripple of it is light.
The light in this room, right now, is a ripple in the invisible stuff that's filling this room.
That's the promise. Take it as a promise, please, and not yet a proof. I will pay it back in full next time, every last penny of it, with the working shown. Now, the third thing, and this one, honestly, is the one that settles the entire argument, for me at least.
The outliving. You said it right at the very start of the show, and it snagged on me, that the field can outlive its source. That was the one that made me sit up straight.
Here is what that actually means. Make a ripple in the field, shake the charge, send a wave running out across the space. And now, take the charge away. Remove it entirely. Destroy it, whisk it clean off, do whatever you please to the thing that made the ripple in the first place. And the ripple you already sent out does not care. Not in the slightest. It just keeps going. It travels on through space, entirely on its own, long, long after the thing that made it is gone and forgotten.
Hold on a moment. The source is gone, completely gone, wiped out, no longer exists, and the disturbance is still out there, still travelling along, with nothing left behind it making it happen anymore.
With nothing left behind it making it happen anymore. It's cut loose. It is entirely on its own now, carrying its own energy along with it, moving through space under its own steam, answering to absolutely no one and nothing. An orphan, and a perfectly self-sufficient one at that. And that's the thing that ought to stop you cold, because whatever it is not a relationship between two objects anymore. One of the objects is gone. It isn't describing a tug between this and that. It's just out there, being itself, a piece of the world that packed its own lunch and left home for good.
That's the one that gets me. That's the one. Because a story about two objects, if you take one of the objects away, the story is simply over. there's nothing left to tell. The teller's packed up and gone home. But this thing keeps going.
Nothing left to tell. And yet the ripple is still travelling, still out there, still moving. So it plainly cannot have been just a story about the objects, can it? Because the objects are gone, and the thing is still here, still moving, still carrying its energy across the dark. It's a thing in its own right, and really, when you get down to it, that's the whole definition of a thing, isn't it? It holds energy, and it goes on existing all on its own, without anyone's help.
That's the one. If it carries real energy and it outlives the very thing that made it, then calling it just bookkeeping starts to sound a little bit silly out loud. You don't get to outlive your own accountant.
You do not. And now, think for a second about what all of that means for the light we were just talking about. The light leaving a distant star, the star itself may have died an age ago, may have gutted out and gone cold and dark entirely. And the ripple it made, all that time ago, is still out there crossing space, still travelling, still arriving, still landing softly in your eye on a clear night. The source is long, long dead. The field it made is very much, very definitely, still going. Think about that the next time you look up on a clear night. A good many of those little points of light are messages still arriving from senders who are no longer there. The field crossing the dark, faithfully, patiently, from a source that stopped existing long before you were ever born to look up at it.
The star's dead, and its light is still coming. Because the light was never really the stars to begin with, not in the way I'd have said. It was a ripple in the field, cut loose, travelling on all alone in the dark.
Cut loose and travelling on alone. So I'll ask you the question straight, now that you've seen all three of them lined up. Is the field real, or is it just bookkeeping?
It's real. All right, you've got me. Fair and square, hands up. It carries real energy. It can be plucked and set rippling, and it outlives the very thing that made it. That is not a way of talking. That is not a shadow on a wall. That is a thing. Faraday was right, and every clever person who ever smirked at him for drawing his silly little lines of force was wrong.
Faraday was right. He felt it in the lines before a single living soul could prove it in the mathematics. And now, having made the field into a real, honest, load-bearing thing, I am going to do one more move. And it is going to sound like too much. Genuinely too much. I want you to let me do it anyway, because it is exactly where the whole rest of this course is quietly, patiently heading.
Too much? Oh, wonderful. My very favourite size of claim. All right, go on then. What's the too much?
Don't file the field away in your head under handy extra thing that helps explain the forces between particles. Don't make it the helper. Turn the entire picture the other way up. In modern physics, the field is the more fundamental object. It is not the supporting layer underneath the real cast. It is the main one. It's the lead.
More fundamental than the particle, than the actual little bits of solid stuff that, I was assured, everything else is built out of.
Than the actual little bits of stuff. Because, and I'm going to say this exactly once, lightly, and then leave it hanging in the air all the way through to the finale, the particles themselves turn out to be made of fields. An electron, at the very deepest level anyone has ever managed to look, is a little excitation in a field. A knot, a ripple pulled taut and standing still in something that fills the whole of space. The particle is not the bedrock after all. The field underneath it is.
Okay, that one genuinely turned my stomach right over. The electron, the thing I was taught everything is built out of, the little indivisible crumb at the bottom of everything, is a ripple? In a field?
A ripple in a field. Every particle you have ever met, every one of the ones that make up you, and this table, and the far wall you've been staring at doubtfully all night, each and every one of them a stirring, a disturbance, in some underlying field that spread out across every point of space at once. I am not proving that tonight. That's the very last door in the whole course, and we open it right at the end, together. But that is the direction we're walking. That's where the road goes.
So let me just get the shape of the thing straight in my head before it runs away from me. I walked into this room tonight believing the world is made of particles, with fields as a sort of helpful invisible glue smeared between them to explain how the pulling works.
And you're going to walk out suspecting it is the exact reverse of that. The fields are the world, filling every point of space, top to bottom, edge to edge, and the particles are the ripples in them. So that empty room of yours isn't empty, and it isn't even merely the stage the play happens on. It's the stage and the cast both at once. The actors are made out of the floor.
The actors are made out of the floor. Yeah, that one's going to keep me up tonight. I can feel it already.
Good. It should. That is the reframe the whole rest of this course is built to earn, patiently, one honest episode at a time. The particle was never really the main character. It was the field all along, just doing a very convincing impression of a little particle, here and there, wherever it happened to get pulled up into a knot.
Then let me ask the obvious next thing, and watch you dodge it in real time. If the particle is just a ripple in a field, what's the field itself made of? What's underneath that?
And there's the dodge, right on cue. You were right to expect it. As far down as anyone has ever managed to dig, the field is the bottom. It isn't made of something homelier, hiding just beneath it. It is the ground floor. I know that sounds like a cop-out, and honestly, on a bad night, it feels like one to me too. But every single time we've gone looking underneath a field, hoping for something more familiar to stand on, what we've found is another field. Whether that's truly the basement of the world, or only the deepest cellar we've managed to reach so far, that's a question we leave standing wide open, right at the very edge of the known.
Right, and here's where I start to get properly nervous, so let me just ask it. If we're demoting the particle from the lead role like this, are we throwing out everything we spent 4 whole episodes so carefully building up? The least action, the symmetries, the conserved treasures. Is all of that in the bin now? Was it a waste?
Not one word of it. Not a single word. And that is the very last thing I want you to see tonight, because after all that lovely vertigo, this is the part that steadies the floor back under your feet.
Please, yes, steady the floor. We put in weeks on that particle machinery. Does any of it actually survive the switch over to fields?
All of it survives. Every single tool intact. A field has its own least action story. Nature turns out to be exactly as economical with fields as it ever was with its particles. Out of all the countless ways a field could possibly ripple and shift and settle itself down, the one it actually chooses is the one that keeps that same running account as small as it can possibly be kept. It's the very principle from a few weeks back, picked up whole, dusted off, and pointed at a bigger object. Think of it this way. A particle only ever had to choose a path, a single line threading through space. A field has to choose a whole shape. Everywhere, all at once, a value at every point, for all of time. Vastly more to decide. And nature makes that enormous decision in exactly the same frugal way it made the small one, spending as little as it possibly can. Same tight-fisted instinct, grander stage.
So the least action idea just works on fields too. Same rule, brand new player out on the pitch.
Same rule, new player. And the other great tool, the symmetry one, you remember the punchline of that week. Behind every symmetry there sits a conserved treasure, one that never, ever changes.
Every symmetry pays out a conserved quantity. Yes, that one I actually held on to. That one properly stuck to my ribs.
It carries straight over, without a scratch. A field has its own symmetries, and by that very same iron logic, Each one of them hands you a treasure that can never change. There is a particular hidden symmetry buried down deep inside the electric and magnetic field, and the treasure that it quietly pays out is electric charge itself. The reason charge can never be created and never destroyed, no matter what you do, it traces all the way back down to a symmetry of the field.
So charge is conserved for the very same deep reason energy was, because something underneath it all simply doesn't care how you turn it, or shift it, or move it about.
For exactly that family of reasons. I won't unpack that particular hidden symmetry tonight. It's a thread I'm carefully saving for the next conversation. But I want you to feel it in your bones. We have not started over. Not at all. We picked up every single tool we'd already built, and we turned, with all of them still in our hands, to face a bigger object. That is the whole of what happened here tonight.
That's honestly a real relief to hear. I'd fully braced myself for, right, throw all of that away. We're beginning again from scratch. Sorry about the last month.
Never. The first principles don't change. We've only just now found out what they were really about, all along. They were never truly about particles, as it turns out. They were sitting there the whole time, patiently waiting for the field to show up.
So where does all of this leave us then? Standing here, in a room that I genuinely, honestly cannot believe I ever called empty an hour ago.
It leaves us holding a brand new fundamental thing, the field, and one very obvious question hanging right off the end of it. If the field is the real object, the true furniture of the world, then somebody had better sit down and write out the honest rules for it. The complete local rules. How it's made, how it changes, what it does from one point to the next. And here's the thing, do that properly, carefully, for even a single field. And then just stand back and see what falls out of the mathematics on its own.
And I'm going to take a wild guess that somebody, at some point, did exactly that.
Somebody did. He took the two fields we know the very best of all, electricity and magnetism, and he wrote down their complete local rules, all of them. And then he did the patient, unglamorous, deeply unfashionable work of making those rules perfectly consistent with one another. Maxwell. And by the time he'd finished all that tidying up, there was something sitting there in the finished rules that nobody had put in on purpose. Something that just appeared, uninvited. He wasn't hunting for it. He wasn't even looking up at the sky. He was looking down at his own page, at 4 tidy little rules about charges and magnets and wires, and the thing that came climbing up out of them was the oldest mystery there is.
And you're not going to tell me what it is, are you? I can hear it. You're going to leave it right there.
I'm going to make you wait exactly 1 episode. I'll say only this much and no more. He sat down meaning to organize electricity and magnetism, pure housekeeping, tidying the drawers, and by the time the rules were finally perfectly consistent, he had, without ever once intending to, written down light. What light actually is, with a pen, at a desk, out of nothing but the honest rules of the field.
Light, just falling straight out of the rules for the invisible stuff, filling my supposedly empty room. All right, all right. I waved my hand through a fistful of nothing an hour ago, feeling very clever about it, and it turns out I was waving it right through the main character of the entire story. So, next time then, the rules for the field and where light comes from. Maxwell's equations and the birth of light. I'll be here, and I promise you, I promise, I'll try very hard not to call the room empty on my way back in.